on this Saturday night, demanding justice for the victims of Flight 752. The 2-year anniversary of Iran shooting down a passenger plane.
My wife, my only child, along with 174 other innocent human beings and an unborn child, were murdered in cold blood.
The fury and frustration with Tehran and Ottawa. When COVID-19 makes your holiday a giant headache.
If I could go back and tell my old self this, I would have 100% canceled.
The complications in foreign destinations once you test positive. Plus, the Golden Globes minus the glitz and glamour.
You can't just walk a red carpet and act like that's your contribution to society.
What's fueling a backlash and a boycott?
Global National, reporting tonight, Nitu Garcha.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight on a somber note. Memorials are taking place in Canada and around the world, marking a tragic anniversary. 2 years ago, Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752 was shot down over Iran. 55 Canadian citizens were among the 176 victims. Today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau joined their family members for an online vigil. And as David Akin reports, there are new efforts to force Iran to provide compensation.
We are the mothers of innocent passengers on flight PS 752. Let us remember their names.
176 perished after 2 Iranian surface-to-air missiles struck Ukraine Airlines International Flight PS 752 in the early morning hours of January the 8th, 2020. 2 years later, some families are still angry.
My wife, my only child, along with 174 other innocent human beings and an unborn child, were murdered in cold blood.
Angry not just at Iran, but frustrated as well with Canadian authorities.
Canada must stand for justice, and it is time for us all to stand on the right side of the history today, now, and with urgency.
Some families, along with the opposition Conservatives, want the Trudeau government to do more to punish the regime in Iran. During Saturday's vigil, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau responded.
Let me say this directly. I promise you, we will always continue fighting for the accountability.
So far, Canada has acted with other nations whose citizens perished on Flight PS 752, a multilateral approach taken in part because Canada has not had formal diplomatic relations with Iran since 2012. So it has acted in concert with Sweden, the United Kingdom, and Ukraine as part of the International Coordination and Response Group to force Iran to accept its responsibilities and compensate all victims. But this week, that group said Iran has refused to pay compensation, and further negotiations were, quote, futile. Iran, though, said it is ready to pay $150,000 to each family, but only if it can negotiate those arrangements bilaterally or one-on-one. That's an approach Canada and its allies have rejected.
Canada will stand together with the members of the coordination group as a united front, and we will not rest until Iran is held accountable.
Canada and its allies now plan to turn to international law to force Iran to take responsibility. David Akin, Global News, Ottawa.
From diplomatic boycotts of next month's Winter Olympics to fears about democracy and security being threatened, multiple countries are taking a stand against the Chinese government, and pressure is mounting on Ottawa to devise a way to deal with Beijing. Our Ottawa Bureau Chief Mercedes Stephenson spoke with Canada's new Foreign Affairs Minister about this. Mercedes, what did Melanie Joly have to say?
Neethu, the signs are there that Canada is finally working on a China strategy. The government has taken a tougher tone on China since the two Michaels came home in September. Just 2 weeks ago on the West Block, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made international headlines when he accused China of coercive diplomacy and using commercial interests to play Western nations off each other.
We need to do a better job of working together and standing strong so that China can't, play the angles and divide us one against the other.
Beijing responded by stating that Canada-China relations are quote, at a crossroads, and telling Canada the country has a choice to be a partner or a rival. This week on the West Block, we sit down with Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly for her reaction. Joly says the Prime Minister has tasked her with the top priority of coming up with that China strategy.
We need to have that strategy. We need to make sure that we present it to Canadians. That's part of my mandate letter from the Prime Minister, and that's exactly what I'll be doing in the coming weeks and months. And I look forward to answering your question with more details, because it is a fundamental foreign policy question.
What that strategy will look like remains a question. Joly would not say if Canada will ban Huawei's 5G network, as other Five Eyes countries have done. On China's demands for Canada to get on board as an ally, Joly called the relationship complex and said Canada will continue to call out China on human rights issues, but leave the door open to talking.
Well, see, what I think as a foreign affairs minister is we need to be able to talk to everybody, and even when we disagree with them. And we've disagreed with China on many issues, including the arbitrary detention of both Michaels. At the same time, we know that there are economic ties that our businesses have with China. And so it is a complex relationship, and Canadians expect us to navigate it strategically.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has called for a united front of Western countries to deal with China's growing influence, and for those Western countries to work together. But so far, what that looks like in practical terms remains unclear. We'll have more of that on the West Block tomorrow. Neithu?
Mercedes Stephenson in Ottawa. Thanks, Mercedes. To the pandemic now, Ontario is adding additional COVID-19 vaccine clinics to accelerate booster doses for education and childcare workers. There are a record number of people in Ontario hospitals, nearly 2,600 as of today. 385 people are in intensive care. Today, Quebec saw a sharp increase in deaths due to the virus. 44 more people lost their lives, the highest number since last January. It is a similar situation south of the border. Confirmed COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations are skyrocketing across much of the U.S. In California, the number of people in hospital with COVID has more than doubled in just 2 weeks. And as Jennifer Johnson explains, the burden being placed on healthcare workers is difficult to bear.
1 in 4 U.S. hospitals are now reporting critical staff shortages as COVID-19 patients fill up rooms. This Missouri hospital is out of nurses, housekeepers, and beds.
Every place is full, and we're back where we started, where everybody's looking all over the country for beds.
From small towns in Missouri to big cities, the story is the same. Luminous Community Medical Center, just outside Washington, D.C., has seen a 925% increase in COVID-19 cases since Thanksgiving.
That's what hurts the most, because the erosion of these care teams is invariably going to lead to an erosion of healthcare quality.
More than 120,000 Americans are currently hospitalized with COVID-19, the highest level in a year. On Friday, close to 1,800 died from the virus. The phone calls to their families are the hardest part for those on the front lines.
I'm so sorry to be calling you like this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what you're going through.
More than 70% of those hospitalized with the virus are unvaccinated, including 63-year-old Ned Epperson.
If I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't think twice. Take the shot.
Just 62% of Americans are fully vaccinated. The CDC is urging unvaccinated adults to get protected, as many are infecting children under the age of 5. Pediatric hospitalizations are at their highest level since the pandemic began. Parents are feeling the strain.
We might even just keep our 13-year-old out of class and our 4-year-old out of the preschool, most likely next week, because it's just not worth taking a chance.
Essential workers are being hard hit too. About 20% of New York City police officers are out sick with COVID-19. More than 1,000 police officers, firefighters, and paramedics in Los Angeles too. Those whose jobs are to protect are unable to protect themselves from this quick-spreading virus. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
In the UK, government advisors say a fourth dose of a COVID-19 vaccine is not needed for nursing home residents and those over 80. Health officials say a third shot is offering lasting protection against serious illness. Data shows protection against hospitalization remains at about 90%, 3 months after that booster for people over 65. The government is being advised to focus on getting more third doses into arms. Pandemic protocols are keeping a lot of Canadians at home this weekend, and so is the frigid weather. Most of the extreme cold or snowfall warnings affect parts of Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Yukon. Some regions in BC are facing the same, but the province's south coast, where it's slightly warmer, is being warned about snow and freezing rain. And parts of Newfoundland and Labrador are being alerted to strong winds or blizzard conditions.
As they were arcing. And yes, don't stand underneath those things, it'll kill you.
In BC, more snow is accumulating today after some people were dodging falling ice chunks on Friday. A dangerous mix of snow, wind, and freezing rain hitting the province's south coast, and up north, bitter cold temperatures dropping to -40. In Metro Vancouver, a king tide causing significant damage to the popular seawall, prompting waterfront closures as municipal crews grapple with the flooding and debris. People in New Brunswick have started digging out after the first major winter blast of the season, bringing 35 centimeters of snow to areas like St. John. Slick and near whiteout conditions prompting the closure of several highways across the province for hours, and wind gusts of up to 100 kilometers per hour, leaving thousands without power. In Pakistan, cold winter weather turned deadly at a popular mountain resort northeast of Islamabad. 22 people died when temperatures dropped to -8 degrees Celsius overnight. Police say most of the victims died of hypothermia in their cars. Heavy snowfall attracted thousands of tourists to the mountain town. Many ended up getting stranded because of the winter storm and clogged roads. After days of deadly protests fueled by soaring gas prices, there is peace in Kazakhstan tonight. Troops are out patrolling the streets as people lined up to try to buy food and fuel. Yesterday, Kazakhstan's president ordered the military to shoot and kill protesters. Now the country's former security chief has been arrested, accused of trying to overthrow the government. Karim Masimov used to head up the country's counterintelligence and anti-terror agency until the president fired him on Wednesday. Masimov also twice served as the country's prime minister. A warning now about our next story. Disturbing video has emerged from Brazil, where a giant boulder fell on some boaters. The slab of rock broke off of a cliff, crashing down on a lake, killing at least 6 people. Up to 20 are still missing. Dozens more were injured, and most of them have been released from hospital. Recent torrential rains may be to blame. Coming up, a tax paid after you sell your home. Could it be the solution to soaring house prices? Housing prices in Canada's most notorious real estate markets just keep hitting the roof. In Toronto, the average home price is now more than $1.1 million. That's up almost 22% from a year ago. Head west to Vancouver and you'll have to shell out even more, $1.2 million. That's nearly 12% higher than last year. Now the think tank Generation Squeeze believes it has a solution to stop BC's soaring prices. A new tax. Could it work? Ted Chernecki finds out.
There's now $2.44 trillion worth of real estate in BC, up 22% from a year ago. A new study suggests we're long overdue in taking bold action to stop this price climb, with, among other things, a new surtax.
And no, it is not a panacea for the problem right now, because we have allowed the contagion of unaffordability to grow so much and spread so far that we can't solve this problem tomorrow. But we have to take the steps to at least begin committing to stall home prices.
The study suggests homes worth more than $1 million, and that's 10% Canada-wide, should pay half of 1% tax. It means the owner of a $1.2 million home would pay $400 a year to be paid when the home is sold. So after 10 years, the new tax would be at least $4,000, depending on any further increases in value. A $1.5 million home would cost $1,000 a year, or $10,000 $10,000 after 10. This to help stall prices.
No, this would just make housing more expensive and more scarce. This would do the opposite for housing affordability. If you want to lower the cost of something, make more of it.
The study suggests most Canadians owning expensive property are unknowingly part of the problem.
I'm in that boat. I just got told by BC Assessment that my home went from $1.7 to $2.2 million over the past year. I got $500,000 of wealth while I slept.
It was 35 years ago when then Premier Bill Vander Zam's government introduced the property transfer tax to help slow home price increases. At the time, the average price in Vancouver was $150,000. It didn't work. But the tax, it's still there, collecting $1.5 to $2 billion a year. And now the tax man might cometh again.
The feds are also seriously considering a home equity tax. And that could be in the form of what happens in the States. It could be just a straight up capital gains tax that we see on the sale of secondary homes here in Canada, or it could be this version of a surtax.
Ted Chernecki, Global News, Vancouver.
An important food recall to tell you about tonight. 8 varieties of Dole salads and 5 from President's Choice are being recalled because of possible listeria contamination. They were sold at stores across the country and have best before dates of January 8th or 9th. The salads should be thrown out or returned to the place of purchase. Listeria can cause vomiting, fever, and in rare cases, even death. The coronavirus and vacation nightmares ahead when testing positive tests your patience. Testing positive for COVID-19 while abroad is the total opposite of a vacation. As Anne Gaviola reports, the highly contagious Omicron variant is creating a whole new hassle for sun seekers.
In early December, Cindy Norton arranged a 15-person trip to Cuba in honor of her mother who passed away in the spring.
We decided to take a family trip among a lot of family friends, obviously, and just scatter some ashes on the beach.
The memorial trip took a turn when her partner tested positive for COVID days before their scheduled flight back to Canada.
He's feeling fine. He's been fishing all week and having a ball. And now all of a sudden he's got COVID. So we're kind of freaking out a little bit.
He was made to quarantine at another hotel and had to book a new flight home 2 days later. Cindy's experience is similar to Amy's. She was also in Ogun, Cuba, but at a different resort a couple of weeks later. She was forced to go to a quarantine hotel alone after she tested positive for COVID, though her boyfriend did not.
It was extremely scary when they first got me.
She says drinking water was limited, there was no hot water, and the food was not appetizing. In addition to the added stress and turmoil, she says she paid more than $600 for 4 extra nights stay, a PCR test, and other costs. And it's not clear if she'll be reimbursed. In an effort to warn people about the risks, Amy has taken to Facebook and TikTok.
If I could go back and tell my old self this and just give myself a glimpse of what I was going into, I would have 100% canceled. It was not worth the stress.
She recommends traveling with your own COVID test, if only for your own peace of mind. Horror stories from travelers in Cuba, Mexico, Jamaica, and other sunny destinations being stranded after positive COVID tests abound on travel sites and Facebook groups. Air Canada this week suspended some flights to sun destinations from January 24th until the end of April in light of the current pandemic context. This industry expert recommends researching exactly what happens if you test positive while abroad and having a contingency plan. Every jurisdiction, resort, or cruise has its own rules.
I think the worst thing is when things take you by surprise. That's when it gets uncomfortable.
The Omicron surge has changed the risk calculation for people traveling to another country, and the Canadian government continues to advise against non-essential travel. Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
No stars, no red carpet, and no broadcast. Next, the controversy forcing the Golden Globes to scale back. The start of a new year means the start of another award season in Hollywood. And the popular ceremony that usually kicks things off won't be the star-studded event it normally is. In fact, the Golden Globe Awards won't even be televised. Mike Drolet explains.
The Hollywood Foreign Press Association is made up of around 90 international no-black journalists.
The joke highlighted an important truth. The Golden Globes, long seen as the unpredictable and irreverent award show, was called out for not having a single black voter. In protest of the lack of diversity, Tom Cruise, for one, returned his awards, and Hollywood essentially put the Golden Globes on notice. Change or else.
For a long time, celebrity culture has literally just been about red carpets and increasing your star power, yada, yada, yada. The last 2 years, we've kind of been, I think, somehow, in a way, saying to our celebrities, you got to do something with your power. You can't just walk a red carpet and act like that's your contribution to society.
Nearly a year later, Hollywood clearly hasn't forgotten.
Best performance by an actor in a television series, drama.
Rapper Snoop Dogg announced the nominations, but when the Golden Globes tried to line up celebrities for the awards show, no one RSVP'd. Not that it mattered. NBC pulled the plug on televising this year's ceremony to give the Globes more time to enact meaningful change. And to some extent, it did make changes, creating a partnership with a leading civil rights group and adding 21 diverse voters. Of those, 6 are black, short of the 13 it had pledged to add. Progress to be sure, but Hollywood has seen it all before.
I wanted to be here to look out into this audience and witness this moment of change.
In recent years, there has been an effort to project a more balanced society on screen and in the nominations. But many see those changes as wallpaper, while the foundation remains the same.
People are just at a boiling point where they're like, I've had enough. We don't care for this anymore because it's the same result. You're saying one thing and doing another thing, right? People want you to act on integrity, do what you say. If you're for diversity, then make sure you're for diversity, right?
The Hollywood Foreign Press's first attempt at change flopped. Maybe they can get the sequel right. Mike Joly, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Neetu Garcha. Tonight's Your Canada is Conception Bay South in Newfoundland and Labrador. There are beautiful spots all over Canada. Please keep sending us your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.